Do you remember the Christmas cakes that once filled the house with spice and joy? These were the desserts that made holidays feel alive, baked with time, care, and love. When did we stop making the flavors that made Christmas feel like magic? Old-fashioned fruitcake with brandy was once the queen of Christmas tables, baked weeks in advance and aged like fine wine. Dense with candied fruit, nuts, and spice, it was soaked over and over in brandy until it gleamed like dark mahogany. Wrapped in cloth and tucked away, it grew richer by the day, its flavors deepening with time and care. Every slice told a story of patience, generosity, and tradition, of families who believed the best things were worth waiting for. It wasn't just dessert. It was a ritual, a mark of skill and pride passed down through generations. Though it's joked about now, those who remember it know its secret, how the brandy softened the crumb and perfumed the air, how one bite could taste like both memory and celebration. Fruitcake was a holiday heirloom, made to last, made to be shared, and made with love that refused to fade. Lane cake was the South's grand contribution to Christmas splendor, a layered masterpiece that belonged to every grandmother's recipe box. Each slice shimmered with coconut, raisins, and a bourbon-laced filling that whispered of celebration and grace. The cake itself was tender and pale, but its heart was rich, thick with butter, eggs, and stories told over kitchen counters. It was not quick to make, and that was part of its beauty. The layers had to cool, the filling had to thicken, and the frosting had to set just right. Every step was patience rewarded, every bite proof of care. When carried to holiday tables, it drew eyes and silence alike, a dessert so proud it almost glowed. Lane cake was the sweet language of Southern hospitality, served with pride and remembered long after the last crumb disappeared. Hickory nut cake was an Appalachian treasure, soft, nutty, and rare as the hickory trees themselves. Families gathered the nuts in autumn, cracking each one by hand with hammers and stones, saving them for special occasions. The batter was simple: butter, eggs, flour, sugar. But once those wild nuts went in, it turned golden and fragrant. Baked low and slow, the cake came out tender, its flavor deep and earthy, the taste of the forest wrapped in sweetness. It was a celebration of the land and the labor it took to live from it. Served at Christmas, it carried the pride of work well done and the comfort of home. Hickory nut cake was proof that wealth could be measured not in gold, but in generosity, in time, effort, and the joy of something made by hand and shared by heart. The hickory trees gave few nuts, and gathering enough for one cake could take days, which made each slice taste even more precious. Often glazed with a simple vanilla icing or served plain with coffee, it was a dessert that needed nothing more. The flavor was pure, ancient, and enduring. A quiet masterpiece baked in mountain kitchens where every ingredient was earned, not bought. Jam cake with caramel icing was Kentucky's pride, dark and spiced and impossibly moist. The secret was blackberry jam folded into the batter, giving it color and tang that sugar alone could never match. Cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg filled the air as it baked, turning kitchens into memory. Once cooled, a thick pour of caramel icing sealed the deal, glossy, rich, and sweet with just a hint of smoke. It wasn't fancy to look at, but it tasted like the holidays should, full, deep, and a little bittersweet. Families baked it once a year, slicing it slowly so it would last through Christmas week. Every crumb carried the warmth of Southern kitchens and the quiet satisfaction of something truly homemade. Some bakers swapped the blackberry jam for plum or fig, giving each version its own personality. The icing was the test of patience, stirred endlessly until the sugar darkened just shy of burnt. The first bite was like memory itself, tender, sweet, and tinged with nostalgia. Jam cake wasn't just dessert, it was heritage written in flour, sugar, and love. Black walnut cake was winter's answer to abundance, a cake as dark as wood and as rich as the hands that made it. The walnuts were gathered, cracked, and picked clean from shells that stained fingers brown. Their flavor was bold, almost smoky, a perfect match for sugar and spice. The batter rose golden, filling the house with a scent both sweet and earthy. Frosted simply, often with brown sugar or vanilla icing, it didn't need decoration. Its strength was its simplicity. Black walnut cake was the kind of dessert that made guests pause mid-bite, unsure whether to speak or just savor. It tasted like tradition itself, strong, grounded, and enduring, just like the families who kept it alive. Sometimes the cake was layered with cooked icing, heavy with butter and cream, while others kept it plain and proud. The crunch of the nuts met the tender crumb in perfect harmony, a texture that felt both rustic and refined. Every bite carried a sense of time, slow, deliberate, and lasting, like the trees that bore the walnuts themselves. Applesauce spice cake was a wartime miracle that never lost its charm. Made when sugar and butter were scarce, it relied on applesauce for sweetness and moisture, transforming necessity into art. The batter shimmered with cinnamon, cloves, and ginger, the scent filling the air like nostalgia itself. It baked into a tender, fragrant loaf, dark and dense yet impossibly light. Served plain or topped with powdered sugar, it was humble but elegant, the kind of cake that made every guest feel welcome. Applesauce spice cake was the quiet joy of the holidays, proof that even in hard times, comfort could be found in a mixing bowl and an oven's glow. Some families added raisins or chopped nuts, stretching the recipe just a little further, while others left it simple and pure. The applesauce gave it a moistness that kept for days, growing better with time. It was a dessert that spoke softly but lingered long, a sweet reminder that love doesn't need luxury to last. Cranberry upside-down cake brought color and sparkle to winter tables. Tart berries bubbled under a layer of brown sugar and butter until they turned jewel red and glossy. When flipped from the pan, the cake revealed a shining crown of caramelized fruit, tart and sweet at once. The crumb beneath stayed buttery and soft, soaking in the syrup like a promise of warmth. It was festive without fuss, cheerful without grandeur, the kind of dessert that disappeared before the dishes were done. Cranberry upside-down cake was a holiday song in edible form. Bright, brief, and beautiful enough to remember forever. The best versions were baked in heavy skillets, their edges dark and crisp while the center stayed tender. A touch of orange zest or vanilla made the berries sing even louder, turning simple ingredients into something radiant. It was the kind of dessert that looked like effort but felt like comfort, a reminder that joy doesn't need decoration, just care and good butter. Red velvet loaf cake was Christmas elegance in its simplest form. Before it was trendy, it was tradition, baked in loaf pans, dusted with sugar instead of frosting, and sliced for guests who dropped by unannounced. The crimson crumb came from cocoa and buttermilk, rich but balanced, striking without shouting. It was a cake meant for sharing, one that looked like it belonged beside candlelight and carols. Every bite was soft, tangy, and deeply comforting. Red velvet loaf cake was grace wrapped in simplicity, a reminder that beauty doesn't always need icing. Sometimes it just needs heart. Housewives made it days in advance because it aged beautifully, the flavors deepening over time. It was often wrapped in wax paper and tied with string, ready to gift or serve with coffee. The red hue felt festive, a little daring for its time, the color of joy itself. It was timeless, humble, and elegant all at once. Coconut angel cake looked like snow fallen on a plate, pure white, airy, and shimmering under soft light. The cake itself was light as breath, whipped with egg whites and layered with frosting so soft it seemed to float. Shredded coconut drifted over the top like fresh flakes, turning every slice into a winter daydream. It was delicate yet rich, festive yet peaceful, a favorite for church suppers and family feasts alike. Coconut angel cake wasn't loud or luxurious. It was gentle, graceful, and unforgettable, a taste of innocence dressed up for celebration. The frosting was often a cloud of boiled sugar and whipped egg whites, glossy and ethereal, sticking lightly to the fingers. Cutting into it felt like breaking through snow, soft resistance followed by sweetness. Served cold, it refreshed rather than weighed down, making it the perfect ending to heavy holiday dinners. It was Christmas purity baked into cake form. Pineapple upside-down Christmas cake was joy baked in cast iron. Rings of golden pineapple and ruby cherries caramelized under brown sugar glaze, their syrup seeping into a buttery yellow cake beneath. When turned out, it gleamed like stained glass, bright, bold, and utterly irresistible. The flavor was tropical sunshine in the heart of winter, the kind of sweetness that made people smile before the first bite. Served warm with a dollop of cream, it felt like celebration itself. Pineapple upside-down Christmas cake was proof that even in the coldest months, joy could still rise golden from the oven. Some cooks added crushed pecans to the topping or a dash of rum for extra warmth. Others made it in square pans and served it in neat slices, the fruit shining like jewels against the golden crumb. Every version carried the same feeling. Cheer baked into every layer, happiness turned edible. Gingerbread layer cake was the scent of December itself, dark, spicy, and warm enough to chase the chill from any kitchen. Made with molasses, ginger, cinnamon, and cloves, it rose in the oven like memory itself, filling the air with sweetness and spice. Once cooled, it was stacked high with whipped cream, lemon filling, or soft frosting, depending on the family recipe. The contrast was perfect. The heat of the ginger meeting the coolness of cream, the richness of molasses balanced by a hint of citrus. It was a cake that demanded both time and heart, baked not for show, but for togetherness. Families gathered around the table, waiting for the first slice, the knife gliding through layers as soft as clouds. Each bite was comfort dressed as celebration. Gingerbread layer cake was the holiday's heartbeat, simple, honest, and unforgettable, a sweet whisper of home that never needed decoration. Moravian sugar cake was Christmas morning in Pennsylvania Dutch homes, soft, sweet, and glistening with butter and brown sugar. The dough began as a yeast bread, proofed slowly until pillowy and light. Once pressed into a pan, fingertips made small dimples across the top, each one catching pools of melted butter, sugar, and cinnamon as it baked. When it came out of the oven, the crust shimmered, caramelized and golden. It wasn't fancy, no frosting, no filling, but it was perfect in its simplicity. Served warm, the cake pulled apart in tender pieces, each one tasting of home, of hearth, of comfort shared among family. It was a humble luxury, born from tradition and care, and it never lasted long once cut. Moravian sugar cake was proof that true sweetness doesn't come from excess. It comes from patience, warmth, and a little faith in rising dough. Some families baked it only once a year, saving the recipe for Christmas morning when the air smelled of wood smoke and cinnamon. It was eaten by hand, with coffee or milk, the sugar crackling softly beneath each bite. Every pan told a story of faith, frugality, and love that rose like the dough itself. Carrot and raisin Christmas cake was the taste of resilience turned into dessert. Born in lean years when sugar was scarce, it used grated carrots and raisins to bring natural sweetness and texture. The batter was spiced with cinnamon and nutmeg, the scent wrapping around the kitchen like a promise that even tough times could hold joy. When baked, the cake came out moist and golden, speckled with fruit and flecks of orange. A thick cream cheese icing melted over the top, tangy and smooth against the dense crumb. It was wholesome, yes, but indulgent too, proof that frugality could still make something beautiful. Families baked it out of necessity. They kept making it out of love. Carrot and raisin cake was the kind of dessert that nourished both body and spirit, reminding everyone that sweetness could come from the earth as well as the heart. It became a Christmas mainstay, sometimes layered with pineapple or walnuts, always touched by care. No one thought of it as fancy. It didn't need to be. Its beauty was in its honesty, in the way it turned hardship into comfort and scarcity into celebration. Japanese fruitcake was a Southern holiday classic, despite its curious name. It had nothing to do with Japan, but everything to do with imagination. Alternating layers of white cake and spice cake were stacked high, held together by a citrus and coconut filling so bright it could wake a winter morning. The texture was tender and lush, each layer soaking up just enough of the filling to grow moist with time. Made days in advance, it only got better as the flavors mingled. It was a showstopper at Christmas tables, golden, fragrant, and crowned with snowy coconut. Japanese fruitcake wasn't just dessert, it was patience rewarded, love layered, and the essence of Southern creativity baked into tradition. Families guarded their recipes like heirlooms, passing them down handwritten in faded ink. The cake took effort, zesting oranges, grating coconut, mixing by hand. But the result was worth every minute. When it appeared on the holiday table, it felt like joy itself. Pound cake with rum glaze was the gift that never failed, wrapped not in paper but in scent. Dense and buttery, it baked to a rich golden brown, its crust crisping just enough to hold the glaze. While still warm, cooks brushed it generously with rum syrup, letting the sweet warmth soak deep into every crumb. The cake grew more flavorful each day, the rum mellowing as the butter deepened. Sliced thick and served plain or with whipped cream, it carried the kind of comfort that lingered long after the holidays ended. Some baked it in round molds, others in loaf pans, all knowing it tasted of generosity. Pound cake with rum glaze was more than dessert. It was gratitude shared, a symbol of time well spent and kindness well given. Sometimes it was mailed across states, wrapped in wax paper and tied with ribbon, its scent escaping through the box before it was opened. One bite carried the promise of home, no matter how far away you were. Date and nut loaf was once the quiet star of Christmas spreads, rich, dark, and humble in appearance, but heavenly in taste. Chopped dates simmered with butter and sugar until syrupy, then folded into a batter thick with walnuts or pecans. The loaf baked up dense but moist, the sweetness balanced by the earthy crunch of nuts. Served sliced and buttered, it paired perfectly with coffee or tea on chilly mornings. It wasn't a cake that sought attention, yet it always disappeared first. Every bite carried warmth, a taste that felt both old-fashioned and timeless. Date and nut loaf was a reminder that beauty often hides behind simplicity, a treasure baked for those who knew how to appreciate quiet comfort. Molasses stack cake was the story of Appalachian Christmas told in layers. Thin sheets of spiced molasses cake were stacked high with apple filling in between, each one spreading just a little as the days passed. By Christmas Eve, the layers had softened into one, rich with spice and fruit. It was never rushed, it couldn't be, and that patience made it taste like nothing else. Sweet, tangy, and fragrant, it was a labor of love passed from hands that measured by memory, not cups. The cake was often served in thin slices, shared with reverence. Molasses stack cake was not just dessert, it was time-made edible, a gift from one generation to the next, flavored with endurance, love, and a little mountain magic. Families used dried apples cooked down slowly in iron pots, thickened until they could spread like jam. The scent filled cabins with warmth, even on the coldest December nights. It was a cake that demanded community. Sometimes each woman in a town baked one layer, joining them all together at the end as a symbol of kinship. No frosting, no frills, just the taste of patience and pride. Chocolate mayonnaise cake was born from thrift but remembered for indulgence. During the Depression, cooks replaced butter and eggs with mayonnaise, a trick that gave the cake an unbelievable moistness and depth. Baked dark and rich, it tasted like a secret no one wanted to share. Frosted with chocolate or coffee icing, it felt like luxury without waste. The texture was dense but soft, every bite melting like silk. It became a surprise Christmas favorite, proof that necessity could create beauty. Families who couldn't afford extravagance still found joy in a single square of this tender, glossy cake. Chocolate mayonnaise cake was resourcefulness turned delicious, proof that creativity is its own kind of wealth. The mayonnaise worked its quiet magic, adding tang and moisture that outshone any butter-based recipe. Grandmothers swore by it, baking it for holidays and birthdays alike, knowing guests would never guess the secret ingredient. Served with a tall glass of milk or a scoop of ice cream, it was proof that thrift could taste divine. Prune cake with buttermilk glaze was a southern heirloom, soft, sticky, and sweet enough to stop conversation mid-bite. Chopped prunes disappeared into the batter, leaving only a deep, mellow sweetness behind. The cake baked up rich and golden, the scent of cinnamon and brown sugar filling the air. Once cooled, it was draped in a silky buttermilk glaze that soaked into the crumb like a sigh. It wasn't flashy, but it didn't need to be. Its warmth spoke louder than any decoration. Prune cake was memory in motion, a dessert that tasted like kindness itself. It was a recipe that lived in handwritten cards and old church cookbooks, passed quietly from one kitchen to another. The prunes, boiled soft before baking, added moisture that made the cake last for days without drying out. Served with coffee on Christmas morning or wrapped as a gift for neighbors, it was a gesture of care disguised as dessert, humble, honest, and utterly Southern. Oatmeal spice cake was the definition of comfort born from scarcity. Oats were soaked until tender, then folded into a spiced batter of brown sugar and butter, transforming the humble pantry staple into celebration. It baked into a moist, hearty cake that smelled of home and holidays, its top sprinkled with nuts or coconut for texture. Frosted with caramel or cream cheese icing, it became rich enough to rival any fancy dessert. Oatmeal spice cake carried the heart of every family who learned to make do and make joy anyway. Each bite was gratitude, sweetened by memory. The oats gave the cake a softness that felt like warmth itself, the spices wrapping around the senses like a blanket. Even when times were lean, a pan of this cake could fill a house with hope. It wasn't just dessert. It was comfort served on a plate, proof that love always finds a way to rise. It was a recipe that aged with grace, passed down in stained notebooks and remembered by instinct, never needing precision to taste just right. Snowdrift cake was winter captured in sugar and cream, a vision of snow made edible. The cake itself was light as breath, whipped full of egg whites and folded gently until the batter shimmered like satin. Baked to pale perfection, it emerged tender and airy, the kind of cake that seemed to melt rather than crumble. The frosting was pure white too, a mixture of boiled sugar and whipped meringue, soft as clouds and sweet as a hymn. Shredded coconut drifted over the top like the first snowfall, catching the light and making the whole cake glow. It wasn't loud or rich. It was elegance, born of restraint, a holiday dessert meant for calm nights and candle-lit tables. Once a centerpiece of Christmas dinners, Snowdrift cake symbolized grace, the quiet kind that didn't boast but lingered. A single slice felt like peace itself, dissolving on the tongue, leaving only warmth behind. Even now, it remains a forgotten beauty, a whisper of winter mornings when joy was simple and white as sugar. German butter cake or butterkuchen was the golden comfort of immigrant kitchens, a Christmas morning tradition that smelled like love and nostalgia. The dough was soft and yeasted, rich with butter and milk, pressed gently into pans by hands that knew the rhythm of home. Before baking, it was topped with dabs of butter that melted into small craters, each one filled with sugar and sliced almonds. As it baked, the kitchen filled with the scent of caramel and toasted nuts, a fragrance that could make even the coldest morning feel bright. Served warm, it was tender and slightly crisp at the edges, sweet but not cloying, perfect with coffee or cocoa. Generations of families baked it the same way, often without written recipes, measuring by memory and feeling. German butter cake wasn't just breakfast. It was continuity, heritage, and devotion, baked golden and shared with quiet pride. It was a taste that connected past and present, proof that love, like dough, always rises again. Apple dapple cake was the shining star of 1960s bake sales and Christmas potlucks, the kind of dessert that needed no decoration to steal the show. Chunks of tart apple and toasted pecans hid inside a rich batter bound together by brown sugar and oil that made every bite moist and glossy. Once baked, it was drenched in a hot caramel glaze that soaked deep into the crumb, turning the cake sticky, sweet, and irresistible. Its scent, a mix of cinnamon, butter, and baked apple, filled entire neighborhoods, calling friends to drop by just for a taste. It was simple enough for weekday baking, but special enough for holidays, a cake that radiated homemade warmth. Apple dapple cake was more than dessert. It was affection you could eat, made for sharing and remembering, the kind of sweetness that never went out of style. Some families baked it with walnuts or added coconut flakes. Others swore by grating the apples fine for a softer crumb. It didn't matter. Every version worked its own kind of magic. Served slightly warm, it was the taste of home itself. Sweet, familiar, and always worth the wait. Lady Baltimore cake was Southern grace in edible form, a proud layered confection once found on every elegant Christmas table. The layers were pale and tender, often baked from a white sponge or butter cake, while the filling was a masterpiece of chopped nuts, raisins, and candied fruit folded into boiled frosting. Each slice revealed ribbons of sweetness, richness, and texture that felt like history told through flavor. It wasn't an easy cake. It required patience, timing, and a steady hand. But that made it all the more special. The frosting, soft and glossy, crowned the cake like snow over a grand house porch. Lady Baltimore cake wasn't just baked. It was presented, admired, and remembered. Its legacy lived on through recipe cards stained with sugar and stories told in kitchens about mothers, daughters, and the art of making something beautiful simply because you could. The first bite was always a moment, quiet, reverent, and a little nostalgic. It wasn't just about the taste. It was about everything that came before it. The mixing, the waiting, the memory of hands that made it long ago. Persimmon pudding cake was the Midwest's secret jewel, humble, amber-colored, and full of slow, steady sweetness. Ripe persimmons, gathered after the frost, were pressed into pulp and mixed with milk, sugar, eggs, and warm spices. The batter poured thick like custard and baked until the edges browned and the center quivered gently. Served warm with whipped cream or vanilla sauce, it carried the texture of a pudding and the heart of a cake. Its flavor was deep and haunting. Somewhere between caramel and fruit, the taste of winter turned tender. Generations passed it down quietly, each claiming their version was just right. Persimmon pudding cake wasn't meant for show. It was meant for comfort, for community, for quiet evenings when the year was almost done and the table still felt full. It was often served in old glass dishes, the kind that clinked when you scooped. In every spoonful was the echo of family voices and the soft sweetness of time slowing down. Boiled raisin cake was the wartime answer to luxury, simple, spiced, and made from what was left in the pantry. Raisins were boiled with sugar, water, and shortening until plump and fragrant, their syrup forming the base of the batter. A handful of flour, a pinch of spice, and a teaspoon of baking soda were all it needed to rise into a moist, flavorful loaf. The scent of cloves and cinnamon turned meager kitchens into places of abundance. No frosting, no frills, just honesty and heart in every bite. It was baked during lean Christmases, gifted to neighbors, or sliced for tea, each crumb carrying the memory of endurance. Boiled raisin cake proved that even when the world was uncertain, sweetness could still be found, warm, humble, and enough to share. Some families added nuts or drizzled a light glaze when ingredients allowed, but even plain, it was perfect. It tasted like hope baked in a pan, simple and steadfast. Black cake was the crown jewel of Caribbean American Christmas traditions, rich, dark, and heady with rum-soaked fruit. Raisins, prunes, currants, and cherries were soaked for weeks, sometimes months, in rum and wine until they melted into a fragrant paste. Molasses and brown sugar deepened the color to near ebony, and the baked result was dense yet velvety, a masterpiece of patience and love. Each slice shimmered with warmth and history, tasting of spice, smoke, and joy. Families guarded their recipes fiercely, blending old island ways with new American ingredients. Black cake wasn't just dessert. It was memory preserved, a celebration of roots that stretched across oceans. To serve it was to honor where you came from, to taste home in every bite, to remember that sweetness, like heritage, only grows stronger with time. Every family's version was different. Some richer, some heavier with fruit, some drenched in more rum than the recipe called for. It was baked days before Christmas and wrapped in foil to rest, the flavors deepening with each passing night. When finally cut, the cake was dark as midnight and sweet as memory, the taste of history that never faded. Brown sugar nut coffee cake was the quiet pleasure of the morning after Christmas, a warm, buttery ring that tasted like rest. Made from sour cream or buttermilk batter, it baked golden in a bundt pan, with layers of brown sugar, cinnamon, and chopped nuts spiraled through the center. The kitchen filled with its toasty scent long before the coffee finished brewing. Served warm and soft, it crumbled just enough on the fork, each bite rich but never heavy. Families gathered sleepy-eyed in robes, nibbling slices while wrapping paper still littered the floor. Brown sugar nut coffee cake wasn't about celebration, it was about comfort. The sweet exhale after joy, the quiet moment when everything felt enough. Some added streusel on top, others drizzled icing over the ring, but the heart of it was always the same. Sweetness meant to be shared slowly. It was the taste of peace after the rush, of contentment baked golden. Popcorn cake was pure 1950s whimsy, a holiday invention that belonged as much to children as to grown-ups. Made from popped corn bound together with melted marshmallows and dotted with nuts, gumdrops, and candied fruit, it looked like confetti in cake form. Molded into rings or squares, it gleamed with color and cheer, a centerpiece that felt both playful and proud. Every slice cracked and crunched, sweet and salty in equal measure. Popcorn cake was fun in edible form, the spirit of togetherness and laughter. It wasn't about finesse. It was about family, noise, and the joy of making something bright to share. Forgotten by most, it remains one of the happiest tastes Christmas ever offered. Kids often helped shape it, hands sticky with marshmallow and sugar, sneaking bites before it cooled. It was dessert and decoration in one, a reflection of mid-century joy, colorful, simple, and made to make people smile. Spice cake with burnt sugar frosting was warmth disguised as dessert, a golden, fragrant cake layered with nostalgia and flame-kissed sweetness. The batter blended cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg into a soft, moist crumb that filled the room with the scent of comfort. The frosting was the real magic. Sugar melted until deep amber, then whipped with milk and butter to a silky caramel glaze. It poured warm over the cake, setting into a glossy sheen that crackled slightly with each slice. One taste, and you could feel the glow of old kitchens and flickering firelight. Spice cake with burnt sugar frosting was not just food, it was memory in motion, the taste of warmth when winter pressed hardest. It reminded families that sweetness came from patience, from watching the sugar darken, from timing the pour just right. Served with coffee or milk, it carried the comfort of home through every bite. Date nut bread was once the quiet soul of Christmas baking, rich and dark with the scent of coffee and spice. It was baked in small loaf pans, wrapped in wax paper and tied with ribbon before being shared with neighbors and friends. Each slice told a story of thrift and love, sweetened with chopped dates and crunchy walnuts. The Depression-era kitchen was full of such recipes, born not from abundance, but from imagination. Dates added sweetness when sugar was scarce, and nuts stretched the batter further without waste. Served warm with butter or cream cheese, it was both humble and indulgent. Date nut bread was a gift you baked, not bought, and in that act of giving, it became something sacred. Today, it is mostly forgotten, lost among flashier desserts and faster lives. But if you ever taste it again, the deep caramel flavor, the softness, the quiet comfort, you will remember that some of the richest things come from the simplest hands. Jell-O molds with fruit suspended inside were edible art, shimmering in every color imaginable. They jiggled proudly from crystal bowls or ring molds, the crown jewel of every 1980s Christmas buffet. Cherries, mandarin oranges, or even canned pineapple slices floated like tiny ornaments inside. No holiday was complete without one, bright, wobbly, and full of personality. The first slice always drew gasps, the gelatin parting perfectly to reveal its jeweled treasures. It was the era's definition of beauty in food, fun, futuristic, and perfectly impractical. Children stared in awe, adults smiled with nostalgia, and every spoonful tasted like the sweetness of celebration. Sometimes it was made with whipped topping folded in for extra fluff, or layered by hand in stripes of green, red, and gold. No one called it refined, but everyone called it festive. Jell-O molds weren't just dessert. They were sculpture, history, and a little taste of magic on every holiday plate. Ritz crackers were one of those things Grandma never ran out of in December. The red box sat proudly on the counter, waiting for the parade of cheese balls, dips, and casseroles that made Christmas sparkle. Ritz was more than a cracker. It was a foundation. Grandma crushed them into buttery crumbs to top casseroles or rolled them around deviled ham for church potlucks. The crunch was perfection, light yet rich, and it seemed to make everything taste a little more special. Kids would sneak a few plain, straight from the sleeve, while Grandma looked the other way with a smile. When guests arrived unannounced, she would whip up something fancy in minutes, and Ritz was always the star. The golden round edges and that slightly sweet, salty taste were comfort wrapped in convenience. Back then, buying multiple boxes before Christmas was not excess, it was preparation. You could build a holiday buffet with nothing but Ritz and imagination. Ginger ale. Glazed ham shimmered like a holiday jewel. Coated with brown sugar and basted with ginger ale, it baked into a glossy, golden masterpiece that perfumed the house with warmth and spice. The soda added sweetness and a subtle tang, caramelizing perfectly in the oven's heat. Often served alongside turkey for large family gatherings, it was the dish that meant abundance, 2 main courses instead of 1. The glaze formed a sticky, crackling crust that guests remembered long after the meal. For many mid-century families, this ham symbolized celebration without extravagance, transforming an everyday cut of meat into something grand. Today, it's rare to find on Thanksgiving tables, but its sparkle still lingers in family recipe boxes. Ginger ale glazed ham was proof that a little creativity could turn any meal into a feast. 7-layer dip was the Tex-Mex miracle that made every 1980s party table complete. Built in glass dishes so everyone could admire its colorful stripes, it layered beans, sour cream, guacamole, salsa, cheese, olives, and tomatoes, like edible art. It was food you could see, food that invited curiosity before you even picked up a chip. The first scoop always broke the clean pattern, but that was part of the fun. By the end of the night, it looked like a joyful mess of color and taste. Every ingredient brought its own story. Canned, refried beans for thrift, guacamole for trendiness, shredded cheese for comfort. It was multicultural celebration in a casserole dish, bold and unapologetically 1980s. Kids loved it for the color, adults for the spice, and everyone for the ease of it all. It turned any table into a fiesta, even under twinkling Christmas lights. In every creamy scoop was proof that food could be both casual and festive, both homemade and easy. A perfect symbol of its time. Cornflake Christmas wreaths were sticky, sweet, and green, the kind of treat that made every child's eyes light up in the 1960s. They were crafted from melted marshmallows, butter, and cornflakes, tinted with food coloring and dotted with tiny red candies. Simple, messy, and irresistible, these wreaths were a mother's quick solution for something festive without breaking the budget. Children shaped them by hand, their fingers coated in syrupy sugar, while laughter filled the kitchen. No one cared if they looked uneven or stuck to the wax paper. The fun was in the making. These little wreaths symbolized everything pure about mid-century Christmas joy, creativity, resourcefulness, and togetherness. They cooled on countertops, glistening like ornaments you could eat, waiting to be carried to school parties or shared after church. They might not appear on holiday tables today, replaced by sleek desserts and store-bought cookies, but their memory lingers like the sound of wrapping paper and carols. One bite could still take anyone back to the warmth of a simpler season. Party meatballs and grape jelly sauce were the soul of every 1980s slow cooker. The recipe was simple: frozen meatballs, grape jelly, and bottled chili sauce. But the result was magic. Sweet, tangy, and sticky, they were impossible to stop eating once you started. The pot sat on the counter, bubbling quietly while guests arrived, filling the air with temptation. People hovered nearby, spearing one after another with toothpicks, pretending they were just tasting. It was the dish that defined 1980s entertaining: easy, reliable, and delicious beyond expectation. Kids loved them, adults loved them, and even the host loved them because cleanup was a breeze. The glossy sauce coated every bite in nostalgia, reminding everyone that food didn't need to be complicated to be loved. Party meatballs were proof that sometimes the most unexpected combinations, like jelly and spice, made the best memories. Brown bread. Steamed pudding was a taste of New England's heart, dense, dark, and fragrant with molasses. Made from cornmeal, whole wheat flour, and buttermilk, it was steamed slowly in coffee cans or cloth bags, filling homes with warmth and spice. Each serving was soft, slightly sticky, and comforting, best eaten with butter or a drizzle of cream. For families enduring long, cold evenings, it was both dessert and sustenance. Its humble ingredients reflected a time when nothing was wasted and sweetness came from patience, not sugar. The flavor was deep and homey, carrying notes of brown sugar and earth. Once a Thanksgiving staple across rural kitchens, it has nearly vanished from modern tables. But for those who remember, it represents endurance, the kind that fed both body and spirit when times were lean. Brown bread, steamed pudding, was the quiet sweetness of gratitude itself. Ginger snap crumbs were Grandma's secret ingredient long before anyone called it clever. She used them for pie crusts instead of graham crackers, crushing them with a rolling pin until the kitchen smelled like warm spice and molasses. Lemon pies, pumpkin pies, even cheesecake, all of them got a ginger snap base in her hands. The flavor added a kick that balanced the sweetness perfectly. You could taste the Christmas spirit in every crumb: ginger, cinnamon, and just a whisper of heat. She never bought pre-made crusts, claiming they lacked character. Instead, she pressed those crumbs by hand into pans, humming while she worked. The edges browned beautifully in the oven, crisp and fragrant, making every dessert feel more alive. When guests asked for her recipe, she always said it was nothing special, though everyone knew it was. Those crumbs were proof that even leftovers from a cookie jar could build something unforgettable. The crunch was just right, sturdy but tender, like a memory that refuses to fade. She saved every broken cookie from tins throughout December, knowing they would find a second life. It was resourcefulness disguised as creativity, and it gave her desserts a story baked into every bite. No one ever looked at pie the same way again after hers. Pigs in a blanket were pure happiness wrapped in crescent dough, little cocktail sausages tucked into golden pastry, brushed with butter, baked until puffed and warm. No appetizer vanished faster. People hovered near the oven just to grab them fresh off the tray. You could hear the laughter and smell the nostalgia before they even reached the table. They were the snack that broke down barriers, eaten by everyone from kids in footy pajamas to grandparents sipping eggnog. The texture was soft yet crisp, the taste salty, buttery, and deeply comforting. Each one disappeared in 2 bites, followed by that inevitable reach for another. You could dip them in mustard, ketchup, or nothing at all. They were perfect either way. In a decade obsessed with convenience and joy, pigs in a blanket delivered both. They were bite-sized celebration, proof that the simplest things are sometimes the most unforgettable. Cranberry orange mold shimmered on 1960s Christmas tables like edible stained glass. Bright and tart, it offered a rare burst of color during gray winter days. Housewives poured gelatin over crushed cranberries, orange zest, and bits of celery, sometimes adding nuts for a little crunch. The finished mold was firm, glossy, and ready to slide neatly onto a serving platter, glinting like a ruby centerpiece. Cranberry orange mold was elegance for the everyday cook, a dish that looked expensive but came from a few cans and a bit of patience. It carried the pride of homemaking, the belief that presentation mattered as much as flavor. Families sliced it alongside turkey and ham, its tang balancing the richness of the meal. It was festive, cheerful, and strangely comforting, a recipe that sparkled in the middle of an ordinary dining room. But somewhere along the way, it disappeared. Maybe too bright, too jiggly, too dated for modern taste. Still, for those who grew up watching it wobble in the fridge, the sight alone can take them straight back to Christmas Eve. Dream Whip dessert topping mix was the miracle that turned every pie into a masterpiece. Grandma loved it because it did not need refrigeration, and in a crowded 1970s kitchen, that was a blessing. She would pull the little box from the cupboard, whisking milk and powder until it turned into a cloud of sweetness. Dream Whip was not just whipped topping, it was anticipation, the last touch before dessert reached perfection. It crowned lemon meringue pies, coated chocolate puddings, and softened the edges of even the toughest fruitcakes. You could taste the joy in every spoonful, light but indulgent, familiar yet special. Grandma always had an extra box tucked away just in case guests showed up unexpectedly. Dream Whip was holiday assurance, the creamy promise that no dessert would ever feel unfinished. Mince pie was the grand finale of old-fashioned Thanksgivings. Filled with dried fruits, spices, and sometimes sweet or meat, it was rich, dark, and deeply aromatic. Its scent alone could fill a home with warmth and expectation. This pie told stories of early settlers who stretched what they had into something celebratory. The filling was simmered slowly, seasoned with nutmeg, cinnamon, and clove, flavors that tasted like history itself. Mince pie wasn't light or fleeting. It was meant to be savored, slice by slice. For generations, it sat proudly beside pumpkin and apple pies, holding its own as the taste of tradition. Today, it's nearly vanished from holiday tables, replaced by easier, milder desserts. But for those who remember, mince pie was more than food. It was the taste of gratitude, memory, and time well kept. Crab rangoon was a touch of exotic elegance in the 1980s suburbia, a golden fried triangle filled with cream cheese and imitation crab. It was the kind of dish that made people feel worldly, even if it came from the local supermarket freezer. Fried crisp and served on shiny platters, it crackled when bitten, revealing a creamy center that felt like luxury. The flavor was sweet, savory, and unfamiliar enough to spark conversation. Guests would nibble and nod, declaring it different but delicious. It symbolized a decade of culinary adventure, when American kitchens flirted with the flavors of the world without ever leaving home. The sound of laughter mixed with the crunch of pastry, and soon the platter would be empty, save for crumbs and conversation. Crab rangoon was the 1980s version of daring. A little risky, a little indulgent, and always worth remembering. Party meatballs and grape jelly sauce were the soul of every 1980s slow cooker. The recipe was simple: frozen meatballs, grape jelly, and bottled chili sauce. But the result was magic. Sweet, tangy, and sticky, they were impossible to stop eating once you started. The pot sat on the counter, bubbling quietly while guests arrived, filling the air with temptation. People hovered nearby, spearing one after another with toothpicks, pretending they were just tasting. It was the dish that defined 1980s entertaining. Easy, reliable, and delicious beyond expectation. Kids loved them, adults loved them, and even the host loved them because cleanup was a breeze. The glossy sauce coated every bite in nostalgia, reminding everyone that food didn't need to be complicated to be loved. Party meatballs were proof that sometimes the most unexpected combinations, like jelly and spice, made the best memories. People today might find it too rich or too much work, but that was the point. It was meant to be made together, to take time, to stir stories between sips. The foam clung to the rim of the cup, the same way joy clung to the season itself. Ribbon salad mold was the crown jewel of mid-century Christmas buffets, an edible rainbow layered in shimmering tiers of gelatin and cream. Every church potluck and family supper table in the 1950s seemed to have one, its wobbly surface glistening under the soft glow of tinsel-covered lights. Housewives poured each layer with precision, lime, strawberry, pineapple, waiting for one to set before adding the next. The cream cheese middle was the star, cutting the sweetness with a soft tang that made the whole thing sing. It was a dish born of pride and presentation, not convenience. People admired it more than they ate it, marveling at its even stripes and jewel tones. When refrigerators became the heart of the modern kitchen, gelatin molds became a symbol of progress, and ribbon salad mold ruled the holidays. Over time, it vanished, dismissed as a relic of artificial color and outdated taste. Yet, for those who remember, its wobble was more than food. It was a reflection of an age that believed every meal deserved a little glamour. Shrimp cocktail rings were the crown jewel of every 1980s Christmas spread, a shimmering circle of elegance straight from the freezer aisle. Arranged neatly on crushed ice, tails curled in perfect formation, they sat beside a cup of tangy red cocktail sauce that burned just enough to feel grown up. Every host knew presentation mattered. The ring had to sparkle under the dining room light, framed by lemon wedges and sprigs of parsley. It was seafood made accessible, a touch of class on a plastic tray. Kids whispered about how fancy it felt to have shrimp at home, while adults dipped and chatted like movie stars from a commercial. It was the decade when convenience met glamour, and nothing embodied that balance like shrimp cocktail. The taste was cold, sharp, and addictive, a bite of briny sweetness followed by the burn of horseradish. It was both luxury and nostalgia, a dish that told you Christmas had officially arrived. Even after the party ended, that empty ring on the counter felt like a badge of success, the sign of a host who knew exactly how to make the night sparkle. Turnip mash with butter and cream was once a Thanksgiving essential, long before mashed potatoes claimed the throne. Farmers grew turnips easily, and they stored well through the winter, making them dependable when other crops failed. Peeled, boiled, and whipped with butter and cream, the mash was earthy and smooth with a gentle sweetness. Its scent filled the kitchen, a mix of soil and warmth, of work and reward. Families in the Northeast and Midwest considered it a mark of a proper feast. It was simple, but satisfying, the kind of dish that reminded everyone of the farm and the land that sustained them. When potatoes became more popular and affordable, turnips faded from the plate, yet their humble heartiness lingers in memory. Turnip mash with butter and cream was food of gratitude, plain, honest, and nourishing to the last bite. Pillsbury Crescent rolls were the magic trick Grandma relied on when time was tight and guests were plenty. That silver tube popping open on the counter was the sound of convenience meeting celebration. She rolled out the dough with care, smiling as the buttery scent filled the room before it even hit the oven. Sometimes she baked them plain, golden, and soft, piled high in a bread basket with a linen cloth. Other times, she filled them with ham and cheese, turning them into tiny sandwiches that vanished faster than she could make them. For brunch casseroles, she layered them on top like a buttery quilt that baked to perfection. The Crescent rolls were her little indulgence. Store-bought, yes, but no one ever cared. They flaked, melted, and tasted like home. That pop of the tube still feels like Christmas morning. Sudden, joyful, and a little bit messy in the best way possible. The dough never failed her, not once, and that reliability became part of her calm during the rush. Even the children begged to help roll them, giggling as they shaped them into imperfect crescents. The sound of the timer and the smell of butter became signals that the holiday had begun. Those little rolls were more than food. They were a tradition that said warmth, welcome, and just enough ease to keep the joy in cooking. Ham and cheese pinwheels were a host's best friend, rolled, sliced, and ready before guests even arrived. Thin deli ham wrapped around a spread of cream cheese, sometimes with green onions or pickles for bite, all cut into perfect spirals that looked fancier than they were. They sat on platters like edible ornaments, pink and white with swirls of nostalgia. The taste was familiar, simple, and addictive, a mix of salty, creamy, and cool. They fit the 1980s ideal of effortless elegance, the kind of dish that impressed without stress. Moms made them by the dozens, sealing each roll tight in plastic wrap before chilling them overnight to slice the next morning. They appeared at every gathering, from office potlucks to living room parties, always vanishing first. Pinwheels were proof that simplicity could still sparkle under holiday lights. In a decade of abundance, they were the perfect bite of comfort, balanced, nostalgic, and endlessly satisfying. Jellied cranberry rings were Thanksgiving's edible art. Homemade cranberry sauce was poured into molds, chilled, and turned out in perfect circles to adorn the holiday spread. The jewel-red rings shimmered beside the turkey, adding color and ceremony to the table. In the mid-century, when presentation was everything, this dish embodied the era's aesthetic pride. Housewives competed to perfect the shape, the smoothness, the glossy finish. The flavor was tart, bright, and just sweet enough to balance the meal. Over time, convenience cans replaced molds and the artistry disappeared. But in those who remember, the memory still glows. The wobble, the shine, the first perfect slice. Jellied cranberry rings were edible nostalgia, a reminder that beauty once had a place at every meal. Cold pasta salad with Miracle Whip was the every woman's dish of the 1980s. Bright, colorful, and unapologetically creamy. Spiraled noodles tossed with diced ham, peas, and shredded cheese, all bound by that sweet, tangy dressing that tasted like summer disguised as winter cheer. It came in a pastel Tupperware bowl, carried proudly by aunts who knew it would be the first side to disappear. It was easy, cheerful food, the kind you made with what was in the fridge and never worried about proportions. Each forkful tasted like laughter, like the freedom of potluck meals where nobody judged and everyone ate twice. The coldness was refreshing, a welcome break from the heavier dishes, and the sweetness of the dressing tied it all together. It was a salad that never aimed for perfection, only satisfaction. In the heart of the 1980s, that was enough, and that is why we still remember it. Mock oyster soup was one of the Great Depression's most inventive creations, a meal that tasted luxurious without needing luxury. Families who couldn't afford fresh seafood found a way to mimic the flavor and texture of oysters using crumbled saltine crackers simmered in milk, butter, and onion broth. The crackers softened just enough to take on a silky bite, while the milk created a comforting, creamy base. A dash of Worcestershire sauce or celery salt gave it a faint sea aroma, enough to trick both the nose and the memory. Served with a sprinkle of pepper, it looked and felt like the real thing, warm, hearty, and homey. This dish symbolized the resilience of American cooks, especially women who refused to let scarcity steal dignity from the dinner table. It wasn't about imitation, it was about imagination. Mock oyster soup turned everyday ingredients into something that felt special, proving that even in hard times, hope could simmer quietly on the stove. Cold pasta salad with Miracle Whip was the every woman's dish of the 1980s, bright, colorful, and unapologetically creamy. Spiraled noodles tossed with diced ham, peas, and shredded cheese, all bound by that sweet, tangy dressing that tasted like summer disguised as winter cheer. It came in a pastel Tupperware bowl, carried proudly by aunts who knew it would be the first side to disappear. It was easy, cheerful food, the kind you made with what was in the fridge and never worried about proportions. Each forkful tasted like laughter, like the freedom of potluck meals where nobody judged and everyone ate twice. The coldness was refreshing, a welcome break from the heavier dishes, and the sweetness of the dressing tied it all together. It was a salad that never aimed for perfection, only satisfaction. In the heart of the 1980s, that was enough, and that is why we still remember it. Popcorn balls were the handmade treasures of Christmas long before wrapping paper and plastic toys ruled the season. Families gathered around the stove, boiling sugar and syrup until it bubbled thick, then pouring it over fresh popped corn. The mixture hissed and popped, and everyone worked fast, buttering their hands to form perfect spheres before the syrup cooled. They were tied with red string or wrapped in wax paper, ready to be tucked into stockings or passed to neighbors. Popcorn balls were joy you could hold, cheap, cheerful, and filled with heart. The sweetness clung to your fingers, and the smell lingered in the air long after the snow outside had settled. They represented a time when Christmas gifts were handmade and happiness came from the smallest things. No store could ever match that kind of satisfaction. Today they are nearly extinct, remembered only by the few who still make them for old time's sake. But for those who do, every sticky bite is a memory reborn. Corn pudding was the comfort food that defined rural Thanksgiving tables. Fresh or canned corn mixed with milk, butter, and eggs created a soft, custard-like bake that melted in your mouth. Its sweetness was subtle, its texture soothing. Farmers' families loved it because it stretched easily. Cheap ingredients made rich by care. It smelled of harvest season and family warmth, served steaming beside turkey and greens. Every spoonful carried the golden taste of cornfields and patience. Some versions added a hint of nutmeg. Others relied on pure simplicity. Corn pudding wasn't flashy, but it was dependable, a side dish that grounded the feast. As boxed mixes and fast foods took over, this quiet favorite faded away. But those who grew up with it know that no modern casserole can replace its gentle charm. Corn pudding was humble abundance baked to perfection. Which of these forgotten Christmas cakes would you bake again? Comment your favorite and subscribe for more sweet memories from the past.